When you say protection in that context, you mean control, don't you? You mean us actually controlling our lives to prevent things rather than... Because God's laws, if we're in harmony with God's laws, they're protecting us whether we're here or there, hey?
Correct. So if this is us and we are in harmony with all of God's laws of love, so we're in a perfect state of love, let's say we're at one with God, there's this sort of protective barrier around us created by our soul. So it is a protective barrier that's created by soul, but you could almost consider it as it's a love barrier, which means that only loving things can enter our soul. Does that make sense? So it's not really like an armour, it's just like a barrier of love which basically says to the rest of the universe, only a loving event can happen to me. And only loving events do. But when we've got feelings that are out of harmony with love, and anger, shame, and other feelings, they create holes in this barrier of love, if you like. So now there's gaps in our barrier of love where when somebody projects certain things at us, it can enter one of these places that is open. Right? And all of that emotion can enter you then and damage you in some way. Both spiritually but also energetically and physically it can damage you. So this is how spirits finish up getting attached to people as well. So this one here that I've drawn here is about the person's, let's say it's related to their second chakra area, which is about their self-worth. Now I have spirits, male or female, depending on the type of problem, who energetically project and attach to the person through that area, so that they can make that person feel worse about themselves. And why would they do that? What do you get out of making someone else feel bad about themselves? You get to feel better about yourself. Yeah, that's right. So they get to feel, I'm better than I really am, by projecting all this crap out of somebody who accepts this other false belief that they're worse. Does that make sense? Now, once they close up that hole by feeling some emotion, that hole gets closed up. So now this hole's closed, right? What can happen now? There's a love barrier there, right? These people have to be the same amount of love as that barrier in order to go through it. Do you follow me? So they'd be loving people, and what would they be telling that part of you? They'd be telling you, you're a nice person, you're a good person, you're worthy. You know, and even though you've got problems, you know, God still loves you, and that's the kind of messages you'd be then getting. Can you see? But if that love barrier is not there, then any spirit who has any belief system about you can just project at you and you'll accept it. And it doesn't matter whether these people are on earth or in the spirit world. They'll do it. You know, you walk up to the shopping counter and, you know, order some gear and they'll feel, yeah, I can dump on this girl. Right? I can dump on this lady. So they do. Somebody else walks up and they treat them really nice. Right? Because they don't have the ethics to treat all people well. They only treat people well who feed their addictions. Right? And they treat badly other people to meet their addictions. And once we're in a state of love here, a person can have lots and lots of holes in their love barrier, if we can call it that, and we will not choose to damage them through those holes. If we were in a state of love, we would never choose to damage that lady, even though we know she feels bad about herself. Does that make sense? So we'd never choose to harm her. But people who are not in a state of love will choose to harm you if they can get away with it. They will. And the only way to address that is by clearing up the emotion that creates that hole. So that's an emotion that creates the hole. It's not an intellectual thought, it's an emotion. Once you clear up the emotion that creates the hole, nothing can enter that location anymore, except if it's higher than that in a condition of love. Then it can enter. So you get to the point, once you've cleared up that hole, that you only want to spend time and you naturally attract people who always think you're a nice person. Isn't that wonderful? instead of naturally attracting people who are always dumping on you or feeling you're a bad person, just by clearing up that one hole. And it doesn't matter whether you're in the spirit world, in the sleep state, or here on earth, you will attract the same kind of person. So it's immaterial where they are, you'll attract the same kind of person. Does that make sense? So if you understand that, then you can see the importance of knowing the truth, facing truth, and then the third thing, which is really, really important, and probably one of the most important parts of the process, and that is to feel the truth. Right? Many of us willingly do the first two, but when we get to the third, we're all resistive. We don't want to feel it. So, we'll go, oh yeah, my mum, when I was 5, I just went up to her and said something. She just belted me across the face because she was just angry. And we talk about that with someone else, and wasn't that terrible? Yeah, that was terrible. That's what parents normally do, though. So we're now knowing the truth, but not yet facing it. Then we go, when we start to face it, we go, wow, that was really quite bad, actually. It was really off. And she did it for her own selfishness. Like, there was nothing, I didn't do anything wrong. And we start facing that, yeah, that was the truth, that she did the thing wrong, not us. But what comes next? Feeling about it. Now, most of the time, we don't want to feel about it. We'll talk about it. And do you know what I've found? The more you're talking about something, the less you want to feel about it. So if you find yourself talking over and over to different people about the same subject, that's the subject that you don't want to feel about the most, generally. Right? It's when you stop talking about it, and in fact the reality is you will stop talking about it when you start feeling about it, probably. Because once you start feeling about it, talking about it feels cheap. Does that make sense? When you start feeling about it, the feelings are so powerful that you can't describe them anymore. So talking about it feels cheap then. Yep. Now, what I find with regard to abusive situations, is a lot of people who've been abused know they've been abused. A lot of them have faced the truth that they were abused. In other words, they have faced the abusive treatment. They know that it happened. And oftentimes they have tried to prevent those people from abusing them anymore by withdrawing from their life and so forth. So they're facing the truth about it. But they still haven't yet felt the truth. They haven't felt how angry they are about it. They haven't felt how sad they are about it. They haven't felt how ashamed they felt about it, how afraid they were. They haven't felt those feelings. And because that is a requirement to patch up the hole doesn't get patched up. And when the hole doesn't get patched up, there's a gaping hole in that location, and that then allows more people to do what was done to you. And this is where we need to be willing to feel. Remember the definition of humility. Be willing to feel every single thing. Be willing to see yourself as God sees you. And if you can feel every single thing, then you start feeling the truth of what happened. When you feel the truth of what happened, you release the emotion that you've been carrying around. And when you release the emotion you've been carrying around, the hole gets all patched up. And now, any person who wants to harm you in that place can no longer harm you. And it doesn't matter whether they're a spirit or a person on earth, they can't harm you anymore in that location that you've patched up.